We are so excited to be here. I'm Dr. Stephanie Anduri.
I'm Dr. Graham Anduri, and so this is our live stream today is a Q&A session on releasing tension and just healthy singing in general. So we're just going to get started. First of all, we want to just address kind of what is tension anyway. When we talk about tension as singers, what does that really mean? What are we talking about? So tension really is just undue or prolonged muscular engagement. It's when our muscles are contracting either for an extended period of time or in ways that we don't really want them to be. So that can manifest in a number of different ways, and obviously it's usually not something that we want. And when we talk about tension, we kind of talk about that in a way that is it's not really fun. It's not really something that we want hanging around. So
Right. But it is important to note that it is necessary to have, muscular engagement at various points in our bodies throughout our singing, and knowing what's appropriate and what's inappropriate for that is sort of one of the things that we will dig into a little bit. So let's talk about causes of tension. Very often, the cause is actually misalignment, and it's very often misalignment in the body, in the skeleton. It can also be misalignment in our thoughts and sort of not being focused in the right direction. So we'll talk about all of that. It can be an injury or pathology, something that is happening physically in your vocal folds. I have recommended this book a million times, I'm sure, but if you have not read John Colapinto's This is the Voice, it is beyond brilliant. And he talks about his own vocal pathology and how it affected his entire life. It is just the most amazing book. I cannot recommend it enough.
I'll say too, if there is something that might indicate vocal pathology, so like if you have vocal nodes maybe, or if there's something like things just don't seem to be working the way that they're supposed to be working, especially when you're talking, then that's definitely something you want to get checked out by like an ENT or some kind of a specialist. We can definitely put that in the chat. So anyway, so tension can come from body issues, like we said, misalignment or injury or overusing certain muscles. Can also come from thought things, so stress. Obviously, we build up a lot of tension because of stress. That's when we get those hunched shoulders. We get tight neck. Fear, when we're talking about singing, fear of sounding bad, fear of a high note, fear of all kinds of different things can cause physical tension in our bodies. And trying to manufacture a sound that is not a natural sound for our voice, that can cause all kinds of different tension things. We're gonna touch on a lot of those today, because that's what a lot of the questions were.
Right. And beyond that, even just your own life experiences, what you've been told playing sports or doing different activities. I had a student once who was a volleyball player, and she was always lifting her front body but never lifted her back body. And her coach was guiding her in this way. And so she was physically incapable of releasing her core. No matter what she did, she was just so crunched all the time. And so all of these things can sort of tell us so much about our bodies, because everybody's body is different and everybody's experience of tension is different, experience of their voices is different. And so it's just so important for us to recognize that that there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and that what we do in our pedagogy is guide people through sort of self-exploration and in recognizing what sensations you feel in your own body that is impeding the free flow of your sound.
Mm-hmm. And here's the kicker too, is usually the place where we feel tension, whether it's your neck or your shoulders, your jaw, your tongue, those are the most common places that we notice tension as singers. And the thing is, that's usually not the source of the tension. Mm-hmm. And so when we try to address the tension at the place where we feel it, we're not really getting to the root cause of what's causing that tension. It's, we can do things like stretching and massaging that are helpful for sure, but they're temporary at best. So until we get to the root cause of what's causing those tension issues, they're going to keep coming back. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with these questions. So
So if you did not hear this, if you're live, please feel free to type any question you have in the chat as we're going, and we will make sure we get to those. But we'll jump over to the questions that were asked sort of in advance.
First we had Diane Kievit asked about shoulder tension and neck tension. And how to deal with that, how to alleviate that.
So there are several different potential causes, and how we would alleviate that really depends on what's causing it. I would say with shoulder tension, more often than not, it's an emotional thing or it's a physical habitual thing. It's not necessarily a tension that is built up because of singing. There are definitely times that it is. We will address those in a moment. But notice what your body does. First of all, notice what your body does when you're staring down at your phone all day, right? So notice how hunched your shoulders just sort of naturally get when you're bringing your head forward in order to look down at your phone. We're building in all of these tension habits when we're doing all of this. So when if you're looking at music, if you're looking at your phone, even if you can just have it up here, that can help. Sorry to block your face.
That's all right.
But so that's one thing to consider. Also, when we're feeling vulnerable, when we're feeling protective of ourselves, very often we close our bodies inward, and when that happens, our shoulders come forward. So more often than not, I would say, when we're addressing physiological problems, they are driven by thoughts or emotions that are associated with whatever it is that we're doing. So we'll have a fear response that tells us to clamp down our bodies, and our bodies will respond. So what we're seeing in our students is their bodies clamping down, but what we have to address is the root cause. Only answering questions that have already been posted. No, absolutely. Feel free to ask any question as we're going. Just type it into the chat.
If you've got questions that you want us to answer, put them in the chat right now, and we'll absolutely get to those as well. Good question,
for sure.
Omar.
Those habits often come from thought. Whether it's, here comes a high note, or like, how am I going to get all of this out on one breath, or whatever it is. Very often that gets baked into our bodies. But there are other alignment things that can contribute to shoulder tension.
Mm-hmm. And most tension, I would say, a lot of tension issues come from a misalignment somewhere in your body.
Yeah. So for example, if your hips are sort of rotated under and kind of tucked under, very often you'll bring your shoulders forward to meet it. Do you want to demonstrate that?
Sure, I'll be Vanna White.
You do it so well.
I know. So notice if I'm, a lot of people tend to either tuck their hips under this way, and as soon as you do that, it causes kind of a chain reaction with the rest of your body that makes you either slouch like this, which brings your shoulders forward, or it makes you kind of lean back, which I'm still having to kind of bring my shoulders forward to
create balance,
to kind of balance myself. The other way is if you tilt your butt out and you stick it out this way, that's going to cause all kinds of misalignments in a different direction. It can also, for some people, this is hard for me to even do, but they end up like this. But for most people, they end up over-rotating their back.
We call this Kardashianing, by the way.
It causes all kinds of problems up and down your whole body. It causes problems, especially in your jaw, and you can't release your jaw all the way because your head's out of alignment. And your head's out of alignment because everything below it's out of alignment. Right. So it's really, you have to get the entire body to be put in the right shape if you want everything to be able to release.
Right.
No matter how much you try to release that muscular tension, if your body's out of alignment, you can't do it. You literally cannot release those muscles because they're having to work to hold you up.
Yeah, absolutely. The other big part of that, awesome, we have another question coming in. So the other big part of that is that when we're singing, when we have some fear response in our bodies, really often this happens when we're getting into high notes, that we squeeze our shoulders up this way, or as we're running out of breath, anytime we have something that feels like a physical challenge in our bodies, we have learned how to resist, right? So like in the studio, so often we hear like resist collapse. That's how you use the breath. And there's really nothing to resist. The idea of resisting collapse makes us feel like there's something pushing against us, and that just is not there's nothing that we're resisting. So instead, feeling expansion rather than like you're pushing out against something can be enormously beneficial. And the language that we use, we'll do another live on this at some point soon, but the language that we use when we're exploring how to experience our bodies when we're singing is so, so crucial. And so the idea of allowing our voices, allowing the core to release on inhalation fully, allowing our bodies to just sort of, I say to my students all the time, you're not the driver of your sound, you're the tunnel for it. Like your voice is moving through you and you're just there to shape yourself so that it can move through you in whatever way is going to appropriately create the sounds that are, right for
Right.
the style that you're singing.
Right, and I would say too. So Omar, this gets to your question. You said Omar said here. Oh my gosh, my scrolling thing is going too far. How do I improve my vocal stamina for performances? I've noticed that my voice tends to be in good shape for my first selection, but by my second selection, my voice tends to get cracky. Is it as simple as making sure I warm up for hours before I perform? This actually goes right along with somebody else's question. Lisa Campbell said, how do you increase stamina to sing for longer periods? She also asked about jaw tension. So, Omar, to answer your question, no, you don't have to warm up for hours before. In fact, I would say
Don't
definitely
do
do
that.
not
Yeah.
warm up for hours before you sing, because you're just going to wear yourself out doing that. Let me ask you this, and you can, Omar, you can unmute yourself for this. Where do you feel like that fatigue starts to set in? Do you have like a specific part of your body where you start to feel like something's starting to get tired, or it's like not working quite the same way that it was, at the beginning of your first song?
No, I just find that when I perform, that my voice is smooth and clear during my first selection, and you know, usually whatever notes I intend to hit, I hit them. But then by my second selection, it's not tiredness that I feel because I still, have my energy. It's just the smoothness kind of decreases, and it almost feels like if there's like a dryness that happens, or if just like that smoothness in my voice um tends to kind of wear out a little bit. It's almost like I did my best singing during my first song, and then um as great as it was and as great as I sounded, it's almost like it almost feels like there's something that I was supposed to do prior to performing that I didn't do, and as a result of that, by my second song, um, I don't feel like I have as much control over my
Mm,
voice. Like when I'm singing, it tends to not come out as clear, and I'm just like cracking, and and
Yeah.
gotcha.
and, and I've learned how to maneuver through that,
Right.
so that it doesn't happen as often, but it irks the crap out of me, because being the perfectionist that I am, as a singer, you always want to do well, and
Yeah, of
so
course.
when you start cracking singing live, it's not good. You
Yeah.
don't
Right.
feel good about that.
Okay, so first of all, what style are you singing?
Mostly like R&B, gospel,
Okay.
Cool.
that soulful sound.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, let me ask this. Are you classically trained at all?
um I went through some training, but I wasn't raised in it. I
Cool.
didn't
Okay.
start receiving training until my teenage years. And then it wasn't until I went to college and got the opportunity to work with a vocal coach that that training really kicked in. But the the trainer, what she ended up helping me with was um, helping me sing from my, like, teaching me how to sing from my diaphragm, how to sound fuller, because she was like, I noticed that you have a really nice nasal sound when you sing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want you to disregard the fullness that you do possess. And so
Yeah.
I'm gonna help you learn how to tap into that more.
Sure.
Cool.
So
Sure.
that's really where I benefited from the training.
Gotcha.
Awesome. I have one quick thing, and then I know where you're going to go with it, and I'll let you take it away. So, actually, I have maybe three quick things.
You
Sorry.
always have lots
I
of
know.
things.
I say it's going to be one quick thing, and I get way too excited about voices, so I just can't stop myself. So the first thing is, and I also know that I'm a weirdo, and I like feel other people's energy and bodies in different ways. Will you scan right around your belly button, because I feel like you're holding right there. Are you? Does it feel like there's a little bit of tightness happening just kind of right around your belly button? Like you're not sucking in, but you're not like just releasing?
Not letting it go, letting it release.
You mean right now, or
Yeah.
when
Yeah. Just because I'm sensing you right now. That's all I'm, you know. You don't have to figure that out now, but that's something for you to
Okay.
just be aware of. That's okay. You're like, oh my God, I know. Not everybody does a bunch of bodily awareness stuff. I'm huge. We both are huge on like having people aware of their own bodies and what sensations they feel, because that's how we kind of, figure out what sensations are getting in the way of the free flow of your voice. The biggest thing that came to my mind was if you are singing classically or breathing classically to sing R&B and gospel stuff, it makes sense to me that you are adding some extra tension in here that's going to add some fatigue in your voice, not in your person. Like you're still gonna it's a
muscular fatigue.
huge adrenaline rush when you're on stage, right? And then for me, I crash the second I'm done. But it can cause muscular engagement, this undue, unnecessary muscular engagement when you're breathing low to sing in these styles. So I would think of breathing. Let me stand up for a second. I would feel like you're expanding kind of east-west into your rib cage, so just widening, rather than thinking of breathing really low. When you breathe really low, it brings your larynx down with it and creates a bunch of classical type resonating space. Really good for when you're singing classically. Not as good when you're doing anything that involves any kind of a belt quality, and R&B and gospel certainly do.
Right.
And then just allowing the breath to move the whole time, which is what you were going to do.
Totally. So letting the breath do the work. And so what your teacher was saying when she said breathe or to sing from your diaphragm, that's what he or she was saying there is to let the breath do the work. You can't actually sing from your diaphragm. Your diaphragm can only breathe in. It's a muscle that allows you to breathe in. Once you start singing, you're exhaling. Your diaphragm has already done its job. But to get more of your body involved in that process, to move that air through so that this doesn't have to work at all. A lot of times, we think that because our vocal folds live here, our larynx is right in here, that's where the work has to happen. And it's really not. We like to call this the neutral zone. So you have like the power generators all down here in your body. You resonate up in your head, and then it's just a pass through. It's like the neutral pass through zone here. So you don't do anything with this stuff. And as soon as you start to get any muscles trying to like help the sound, they're really just working against you. And so the more we get all of that stuff out of the way, the more you're going to be able to maintain that smoothness in your voice. You're going to have more stamina, more longevity. You won't feel like, I sang so well that first song. What's going on now? You'll be able to maintain that in the second song.
Right.
I will also. Not hearing you sing, I can't tell this for sure, but something to just maybe play around with is what happens if you sing those songs in maybe a slightly lower key. If you're trying to sing stuff that is like consistently, like I'm not a tenor. I can sing like one song in a tenor key and then I'm done. I can't keep going at that level, at that tessitura beyond that. If I drop it down a whole step or something, then I can go for a lot longer. So that may be something to experiment with. See if I put this in a slightly lower key, can I sustain this type of singing for a longer period of time? That might be something you play with, but really the biggest thing is getting your body to realize that the breath does the work, this does not.
Right.
And
I'm going to interject and say that doesn't mean that your core is working hard to get the breath out. The breath is moving through your vocal folds, and you're allowing it to.
yeah, yeah. So that non-resistance piece that she was talking about is really key. Not creating resistance that doesn't need to be there, but just kind of releasing your air, releasing your breath, and just letting your sound be as easy and natural as it can be. I used to try to work as hard as I could to sing because I felt like I needed to, like I was supposed to. And at same thing, I would crap out after 20 minutes of singing. It's like I can't keep going after this. And then, once I realized, oh, I can do like 30% of the work that I was doing and actually get more sound and better sound and sing longer, that was a big turning point for me. So Becky McGarry, she said, through practicing, I've realized that I engage my tongue root when I talk, and therefore also when I sing in my chest voice. I've been experimenting with ways to stop this, but a 42-year-old unknown habit is hard to break. Secondary question, when I do manage to mix whatever note I happen to be working on, I can sometimes feel that those muscles in my throat and tongue start to tighten, and it moves into a belt. Thoughts, ideas? So
Good.
You want to
Sure. I mean, always.
dive in?
Yes. So tongue root tension is ubiquitous. I don't know that I've ever had a student who had zero tongue root tension. That just doesn't exist. So the reason is that we have so many places in our bodies that are tied to tongue root. For one moment, everybody tighten your toes as much as you can. I know that sounds like the weirdest thing. Omar just was like, what are you doing? Yeah, so you're tightening your toes. While you're doing that, release your tongue root and your jaw, and then release your toes. I just watched Omar's face go, oh. So yeah, did you notice, just ask yourself this question, did you notice a release in your tongue root? And if you didn't, it's likely that it happened anyway, because we all have fascial tissue that goes from our toes all the way up to our jaws and our tongue roots, and everywhere. So we are this big interconnected system, and so often we are just focusing on releasing the tongue root from the tongue root, and we're unaware that, like, if you're wearing the wrong shoes, it's going to have an impact on your tongue root. And so it's just really, really good for all of us to be aware of what is happening within our bodies, to be bodily aware, so that we can identify where these habits are happening. Alignment-wise, tongue root is often affected by toes curling, especially in performance. A lot of people like to wear heels or tight shoes. This is a thing. Hips being out of alignment. If your hips are popped back, your jaw is out of alignment, and so is your tongue root. Your solar plexus, so right here in this area, if you are tightening while you sing because you think that you need to support the sound, you are tightening your tongue root as well, which is going to have a big impact on your larynx, on your laryngeal position, on the freedom that you are feeling in your throat and your voice.
Right, because the tongue is tied directly, it connects directly to your larynx. So as soon as you have tongue root tension, it's tweaking your whole larynx out of place, out of whack. Similarly, your obliques, the side muscles here, if those are tightened, which in almost everybody they tend to tighten when we sing, that's going to have a chain reaction effect up into your neck. It's going to tighten these neck muscles as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then, Becky, to answer the question about mix, you're trying to mix something and then you feel muscles in your throat start to tighten and all of a sudden it kicks back into like a full belt. So a lot of the same issues there. If you're feeling muscles in your throat engaging in a way that you don't want them, start with alignment. Make sure that the alignment stuff is where it ought to be. You want to have that line, like a straight line from your ears through your shoulders, middle of your spine, your hips, knees, and the center of your feet.
Yep.
If all that's good and there's still an issue, then it could be maybe you're not using enough air, or you're not using the air in the right way. You're trying to control and tighten things in your body to move the air, which actually ends up holding back air, starving the sound of enough air pressure, enough air flow, and then that means that everything's going to start to constrict.
Yeah. Head position is a big one for this. Very often our heads are forward from our shoulders. This is just kind of a habit that we in society have adopted. And it's, you can see it in mannequins all over the place now. Like if you look into storefronts, the mannequins have terrible alignment because we all walk around in weird positions all the time. So head position is another big one, that as soon as your head comes out of position, you can even hear in my speaking voice the difference between my pharyngeal space here and my pharyngeal space here. My voice is just more released when my head is in position. The other thing you can play with tongue release especially, is just rubbing the buccinators, releasing the buccinators, which are your cheek muscles. It's just a fun word to say. So buccinators.
Buccinators.
Buccinators. Oh gosh. No, buccinators. So you can rub this, and this can also help release your tongue root. The other thing about the throat tension that you were talking about, and I do just want to say for everyone, throat tension, again, if it's prolonged and if it's, consistent, go get it scoped. It's just a healthier choice to make than like hoping that you're doing the right thing by singing on it. If there is anything concerning happening in your voice, go get it checked out.
Because that can cause a lot of this muscular tension, that it just, like, no matter what you do, your muscles have to like over clench. They have to over engage just to get your vocal folds to come together cleanly.
Yeah.
And so,
Thank you,
that kind of stuff, if you're feeling like no matter what I do, it's just not working, go get it checked out. That's always just a safe choice. The other thing with tongue tension that we find a lot is that we tense the root of our tongue, the back of our tongue. It's actually right under here. It kind of tends to bunch up and pull back and down when we're really trying to control our sound or manufacture a sound that's not natural to our bodies. So when we're trying to make a sound that's darker or thicker or bigger or beefier, we get this kind of tongue, back and down tongue position that it gives you this beefy sound inside your head, but it sounds like you're swallowing your tongue because you are swallowing your tongue. It took me years to figure this out, and I thought I sounded awesome in the meantime, but did not actually in recordings of myself. So, Kanani, welcome. So that's a big one. If you find that, okay, yeah, I'm trying to make a dark sound, I'm trying to make a big sound, I'm trying to make a beefy sound, then see what happens if you just allow your tongue to kind of migrate up and forward just a little bit and release that root of your tongue. You might end up hearing yourself with a brighter sound, but you're actually creating more space in the back of your throat to allow for that sound to resonate, to get some more of those naturally low overtones. So you get a much more balanced tone, a much more, what we in the classical world we call it chiaroscuro. So you get a good balance of brightness and darkness instead of this artificial darkness which comes from space in the front of your face. It's like the Barney the dinosaur kind of sound. It doesn't work as well. So
nobody likes Barney the dinosaur.
No. I didn't like Barney when I was a kid. Still don't like it as a parent. So hopefully that answers some of your questions, Becky. If you have further questions, obviously, put them in the group and they'll see what we can do. And then Lisa Campbell asked about increasing stamina. We talked about that with Omar already. She also asked about strategies for reducing jaw tension. We talked about a lot of the alignment things that can help you reduce that jaw tension.
Yeah. Jaw tension is very often a means of controlling. We feel like we can control the sound when we're controlling our jaws. And so just relinquishing control and understanding that your job is not to force your sound, it's just to allow your sound. That's a big, big thing with jaw tension. The other thing, there was another thing about jaw. Just understanding the anatomy of the jaw. So I've heard a bunch of times the lower jaw and the upper jaw. There is no upper jaw. The upper jaw is part of the mandible. It's just part of all of these bones in here.
Unless you're an ant or something.
Right. So when you are opening your mouth, your upper jaw, as it were, stays still, and then your lower jaw opens. So this is, my palms are the back of my mouth and my fingertips are my teeth. So this is what happens. Rather than this or this, your jaw releases down and back. And so you'll feel more space between your molars. It doesn't need to come forward.
Call it like, sometimes I'll say like snake jaw instead of alligator jaw. So letting it drop that way rather than that way. And we also tend to overdo our language. So in English, we chew on our words a lot. We flap our jaws around like crazy to pronounce the words that we have in English. And so we try to do the same thing when we sing. But it turns out you don't have to really do that much with your jaw to articulate all of the sounds that we create. So a fun thing, everybody can try this. You can just say the alphabet and see how little you actually have to move your jaw and your tongue, and you might be surprised. So try it right now. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
So a few of those times, a few consonants, you have to move your jaw. Most of the time you don't. A lot of times it's just the tip of your tongue. Sometimes it's the back of your tongue. But
right,
by and large, we move our jaws way more than we need to articulate language.
So figuring out where you can afford to just let your jaw hang and not move to articulate certain sounds, and where are the places that are absolutely necessary to close your mouth, to close your jaw. You might be surprised at how few of those places there actually are. So that's a big one for jaw tension, is just using it less, doing less with your jaw.
Letting it go.
So then Lindsay Ann from the UK, she said, I'm too often unable to get notes out above my soprano passaggio when singing in front of others, even when I have tried to prepare mentally and I don't think I'm that anxious. Feels like a physical blockage.
Yes, it is a physical blockage, but it's driven by a mental blockage, right? So even in writing, and I'm so glad you asked this question. I am not in any way telling you not to ask the question or say the words, I'm struggling with this. But in like saying that it's always difficult, you're sort of absorbing back into your body that it's always difficult to sing above your passaggio. There are definitely physical things that happen. The first thing I would say is, when we are anxious, very often we tighten right in our solar plexus, which is getting in the way of the tongue root and not allowing the pillars of the fauces to expand and all of that. So the first thing is recognizing where in your body you are experiencing your anxiety. For me, it's almost always in my solar plexus. I would say people either feel it there or they feel it here, like one of those two energy centers. And it just feels like a tightness. So for me, breathing into that spot is enormous for getting that to release. And I'll breathe into it beforehand. And then if I feel like I'm getting tense and I feel like my passaggio is strange, or singing above my passaggio is strange, then I will consciously check in with that spot in my body so that I make sure that I am non-resistant there and allowing the breath to move.
And especially if you're noticing that it's only an issue when you're singing in front of other people, but if you're like in a lesson or in the practice room or whatever, and you're not having any problems with it, then more than likely there's some performance anxiety, some stage fright things that get in the way, and that has very real physiological effects. We have a number of other resources that talk about that and how to mitigate some of those things. So if you're interested, then shoot us a message. We can point you in the right direction on those.
Absolutely.
So otherwise, singing through the passaggio, if it's something that you're having trouble with in the practice room as well, then that can, navigating the passaggio is one of those things that can be daunting for a long time for a lot of people. But once you know kind of how to navigate that, it's almost like it ceases to exist in a sense. So some people like to say skinny through the passaggio. That never made any sense to me. I don't know what that meant. But I do know that when we approach the passaggio with the right resonating shape, especially if you're saying soprano passaggio, I'm assuming that means you're singing classically. You want a large resonating cavity to sing classically, but you don't necessarily want a big wide open space at the front of your mouth.
So when we talk about skinny through the passaggio, we are talking about skinning in the articulators. We are not talking about skinning in the pillars of the fauces. This is a really common misconception. Yep, the sides of the palate. This is a really common misconception. And I've heard skinny through the passaggio probably 10,000 times in my life, and I've heard about 3 people who have told me that know what that actually means, because we're all just regurgitating language that our teachers taught us without really understanding exactly what they mean. And so Kanani has the same teacher we had in our doctorates, and she's so brilliant, there are no words. And she was the first person who really had me understand, like, you don't have to skinny in the back, you have to skinny in the front. And so just keeping, not allowing the articulators to widen, but allowing the pillars of the fauces to stay
Right. So
expansive.
spacious in the back, and then that smaller opening in the front allows the airflow and the acoustic energy to stay focused. But as soon as we widen real big with our mouth, then we're actually closing off space in the back and dispersing all of that air pressure, dispersing that acoustic energy. Sorry,
Stop trying to hit me.
Smacking your wife in the face. And so that just causes all kinds of tightness, tension, strain, fatigue, especially when you're going through the passaggio and above the passaggio.
Yeah.
So check that out. As you're messing around in your own practice, see if you notice I'm trying to open really wide for that passaggio, or am I just getting nervous to sing in front of people?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for everybody that we answered your questions today, let us know. Let us know if this stuff was helpful. If you have further questions, let's start a conversation. Shoot us a message on Instant Messenger, or on AOL Instant Messenger.
We're so old, it's ridiculous.
On Facebook Messenger, and let's see what we can do. Kanani's on the line with us. Kanani, do you have any pressing questions about releasing tension?
No pressure.
Yeah, I got questions.
Yeah.
It's me. I've always got questions.
I know, I love it.
So solar plexus tension. We've touched on this briefly in working together. I haven't really been thinking of breathing into it, so I'm gonna try that idea. But I have just been thinking of staying like open, like east-west 360 expansion, and that's been helping. Like I've been able while I'm singing to scan my body and like notice when it's happening and release it. So it's definitely, there's progress being made there.
Excellent.
But like in terms of releasing these tensions and then being able to get your body to like, I don't want to say like a normal looking stance, but kind of in terms of performance stuff. As weird as it might not be for some people, for me to sing like this on stage, to stay open the whole time. You know what I mean? Like how do you kind of work back down in a way that kind of gets you into a performance appropriate alignment while still staying open,
So I would say the more you do it, the more it gets into your muscle memory. But like there are times that it's appropriate, to open your arms. I use the hell out of those times. Like this is going to remind my body to be open. So even if it's 2 seconds, I have these 2 seconds of my body opening and I feel that sense of expansion, and it's kind of a reminder like, oh yeah, this is what I feel like when I'm really open in this area.
Doesn't even have to be your arms doing it. That's helpful as a reminder, but just kind of giving yourself mentally, just saying expand at your solar plexus there, kind of feel that opening. Sometimes I'll talk about like double doors opening right there, a little portal door opening up. Arms are helpful, but they're not necessary either.
Yeah. There was another thing I was going to say, and I don't remember what it was.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're fine.
Just finding opportunities to just remind yourself to stay released, stay opened up.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is, for me, sometimes it can help if I'm just moving my heart space a little bit higher, like if you're singing in Suor Angelica, which I know you are, just allowing myself, it's almost like I'm opening to the heavens, and so it can be part of your character that you're opening your body in this direction, and it allows you to kind of get out of this closed off place.
The more you can find character reasons to do technical things, the better off you'll be. That's always a good way to go.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, that's I think that wraps up all of the questions that we had
think
for
so.
today. If anybody is interested in working further with us, if they have further questions about this kind of stuff, shoot us a message, or leave a comment in the chat of either if you're not on the live call right now, leave a comment on the post when we post this replay. And let's set up a time that we can chat with you. We'll do a game plan strategy session and see if there's something that we can do to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
And we'll we've got a number of different options for how you can work with us and how we can work with you.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Thanks,
thanks, everybody.
guys.